Hi, I've been playing New York 1776. This is from Worthington Games. It's a block war game, as you can see. I've been playing it this evening. Thought I'd do a quick thoughts, sort of a mini review. The map on the table here is bigger than what's in the frame, so I'm just going to sort of gently pan up a little bit so you can see the whole map. There we go. First up, components. If you're familiar with Worthington's block games, the blocks are really nice. They have nice shiny stickers on them. The finish is great. This is the first edition, so it's got a card map. I may be right in thinking the newer edition has a mounted map. I'm not sure. You have to double check. The rule book is comes in at eight pages, of which let's have a quick look. You've got the last page, which is design notes, and then you have a page on historical summary and some strategy, which is great. And page 6 is, a chunk of that's on optional rules, which I have used from time to time. So it's a fairly describe it as quite a light war game. The rulebook is nicely written. There aren't too many game mechanics for you to get your head round. If you've played other block games, you'll be, straight away into this. It's very clear, simple, as in straightforward game to play. It's predominantly a two-player game. I played it solitaire this evening, and I think you can play it solitaire, and I'll give you some sort of tips on how to do that. And I've enjoyed playing it both two-player and in solitaire as well. So in terms of the key mechanics, probably the key ones I'm going to talk about are around action points. Every turn you roll a die to see how many action points each side gets, the British and the Americans. If the Brits get even numbers, then they'll get 4 action points. They start with 2, but more importantly, they can move their ships from area to area. Moving ships from into the right area will mean that you can move your British armies from one area to the other if you have sort of control over the waters of that area. If you roll odds, you don't get to move your ships, and you get less action points. The American player, even more action points. Odds, less action points. True to history, the Americans don't have a naval force, and what you find playing the game is that as the British player, you're often rolling odds, which means you cannot put your ships into the right areas, which means it really confines the movement you can do, moving your armies to try and chase down the American armies. And I would describe this as very much a sort of cat and mouse type game. The aim of the American player is to stay well away from the British armies and keep moving around, and being able to, as a result of combat, being able to sort of retreat out of combat into a safe area and just keep waiting for those turns to count down. It's a 20-turn game, saying that some of the turns, if you're especially at the beginning of the game for the British player and you're rolling odds for your action points, you really won't be able to do a lot. So some of the turns can literally take a minute. You can play this game comfortably in an hour, maybe just over an hour, and that's one of the great appeals to me. I'm currently also playing a Napoleonics game that I've got set up on the table, and that's like a 5 or 6 hour game. So this evening I wanted something quite light, something I could play in an hour. So I took this off my shelf, and in playing it, I thought, I might make it quite an interesting video. The other mechanic I'll probably talk a little bit about is the battles. This game, the battles take place on a battle board, and you simply, I'm going to use this example here. You simply put your forces on either the left, the centre, or the right, or the reserve for both sides, and then you're rolling dice for the number of what I'll call pips, number of strength points per per unit. Most of them generally need 6s to hit. The artillery need 5 or 6s. If you give the British get 1s, or 1s and 2 if they're the Hessian, they make the opposing sides run away. The truth is the combat's really, really simple, and it's a quite a dice tricky combat sort of system. So for example, I've got 2 blocks here, both with 4 pips. They're going to be rolling 8 dice. The defender always rolls first. So it's, you're rolling quite a lot of dice. You're generally needing 6s, 5 or 6s for the artillery. If you get 1s, like I said, to the British player, that has an impact on the game. But it's quite a fluid, quick, straightforward combat system, and can lead to quite dramatic results, which is always quite interesting. I'm playing it solitaire. How I've got it set up here is not normally how I'd play it solitaire. I've just turned them over. So normally I would either play both sides blind, so turn the blocks upside down so I can't see them. That has kind of an amplified fog of war effect, so I'm almost the umpire between the 2 sides. If you wanted to, you could play either side and then flip the other side blocks over, and again, when you come into the combat, just without looking at them, just put them randomly into the really the 3 main areas, and that lends itself quite well. It's a pretty quick, fast flowing, straightforward game. What I like about this game is that I like the historical period a lot. Really interested in this period, so that's great. The second is that it has quite a lot of what I would describe as sort of narrative of play. So the fact you're moving these armies around. So for example, you can't quite see in the camera, but there's another British army just at the top here. You're moving these armies, the British players moving, or the British side if you're playing solitaire, moving these armies around to try and chase down the American armies over the number of turns, which is quite interesting. And sometimes, certainly when I've played it 2-player, it's very easy for either side, but whenever I played it, seems to be the way the British kind of get stuck between 2 opposing American forces, and even though the British seem to have the upper hand, it can turn against them quite quickly, which has always been quite a rich narrative experience. Certainly one of the things I like about this game is that what I would just call that narrative experience. There's a lot of areas on the map, and there's a lot of scope for a certain amount of tactics. It's the other thing I like about it, and I think one of the things nice about it, certainly solitaire, because it doesn't take long to play, doesn't take long to set up. You can set up, try a few things for a number of turns, then try, it'll be interesting to see if I put some American forces in Brooklyn and in New York, and that means the English player can't put one of their ships into this zone here, which they would normally need to do to be able to bring their forces from here over into New York. How would that play out? How would that work? And within half an hour, you can try that tactic and see how that plays out historically, and that's I find really interesting and really engaging. And there's a lot of things you can do like that. So I think if you're playing it competitively or against someone who also knows how to play, you're probably going to be having 2 armies really against each other. One army with 2 commanders, one army with 1 commander. But I think playing it solitaire or playing it more in that way, then it lends itself to that sort of rich narrative play and those sort of those things you can try out quite comfortably, which is I find works well. Component wise, I like Worthington games a lot. The components are really nice. The mechanics are simple. They're straightforward. Like I said, the combat straightforward. The movement straightforward. In a way, I think you could count this as an introductory game. I've played this with my kids. Within, I can explain how to play this in 5 minutes and people will get it straight away. The blocks really help with that. And again, like most block games, as you take casualties, you're rotating the block round, as you would expect if you're used to block war games. It's a super little game. I think there's 4 games in this series. I have the first 3 and enjoyed them all. Like I said, I'm a big fan of Worthington games. I like block games. They have their space in my collection simply because you can play the game in a relatively short period of time, an hour and a half. They set up really quickly. Even if you haven't played them in a little while, a 5-minute skim of the rules, and you're like, oh, I'm straight back into it. I can remember how to play this, and it has that narrative experience. And it has that, like I said, that interesting. If you're interested in that type of solitaire game, of trying out some different tactics, trying out some different themes within the scope of the game, that's really super interesting. It's not a solitaire game where there's a bot or there's an AI. It's not a solitaire game where it's a puzzle or anything like that. I play it solitaire to experience the different scenarios, the different tactics, and for that sort of rich narrative. So that's probably about it. Nice little, a great little game, and I'm a big fan of Worthington games. They bring out some great stuff. Component-wise, it's great. Rules is great, and there's some aids I think on BGG which condenses the rules down even further to like a few PowerPoint slides I think from memory, and they're really good as well. So yeah, great little game, and that is New York 1776 from Worthington Games. Thank you for watching.